Okay, welcome everybody. Let's talk about AI. Today's topic is your path to success with AI enhanced products. My name is Mikko Peltola and I'm here presenting today with Petri Salonen.
I've been working with Microsoft as a vendor for the past 18 years, delivering workshops for their global ISVs, doing envision workshops, business design, software pricing, packaging. That's being kind of some of the background doing the frameworks that we're going to be talking about today. But I don't just do workshops, I also do active work. So for example, today I'm CTO on contract with a New York-based company, implementing their SharePoint-based solutions. So working with executives. So really, if you look at me and my work is business models, I've been CEO and CTO and chairman for several companies, SIs and ISVs. So I'm ISV guy, bottom of my heart. Cool.
So Petri does this envision part for ACX, which is my company. What we focus on is the design and development of different solutions. So we do the early research, insights, UX design and visual design part that ties into the front-end work. We have a very strong secure back-end practice. We tend to work on the more futuristic technologies like AI. So I'll hand over to Petri first, and then I'll jump to the stage in the later part of the presentation.
Perfect, thank you. So what I will go walk through, because I think it's important for all of us to have an understanding, how is the AI going to impact different types of organizations, whether you're an ISV, SI, valued reseller, or end user organization. And then really jumping into the business models themselves. How many of you have heard of a business model canvas framework before? So I'm going to walk through, because that's the framework that I've been using since 2010 with different types of organizations. And that's really the industry standard. So what I have done is to really highlight the things that AI specifically will impact on the business models. And those are the kind of things that you should really, when you have discussions with, for example, with the management or trying to convince somebody to invest in the solutions that you are building. And then finally, before I hand it over to Mikko, I'm going to provide you with the steps, yet again, a framework. What are the things that you have to have in place when you start deploying AI? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, for example, generative AI. It can be AI that has been around for at least 20 years. So that's the thing. So let me start first to clarify one thing. And I mentioned this already before. You should not talk purely about AI strategy. You always have to align it with your business model. And that's the biggest problem that a lot of organizations have today, where they try to do something tech without really looking at how is that going to impact on your actual business model itself. That's very important to understand. And even Gartner emphasizes that. Now, what are the things? When you go into the path of AI, specifically on the generative AI side of things, it's not about the technical feasibility. You have to be able to demonstrate to your leaders what's the business value that you are doing it. Even with, if you think about all the sessions that we have had here this week about Copilot, Copilot itself, each and every one is going to ask, what's the value that you can bring with the Copilot itself? Second thing, when you go and identify, and this is what Mikko and I do for a living, we go and identify what are the typical or what are the opportunities that we can do with AI, and you list them and then you start prioritizing those opportunities. Where do we get the benefit the quickest with the less investment, the least investment? And then what is really nice, and Mikko is going to talk more about this, when you start applying, for example, generative AI, it's assumed to be much faster development cycles than traditional AI. So going in a kind of lean mode when you look at innovation itself. And then finally, I think it's also very important, having worked with tens and tens of different organizations, you can't really put two organizations side by side and say, this is going to work for you. And I think that is very important. You all have your own DNA, your own management, your own background. your own resources. And that's what I'm going to be showing you through this industry standard framework. Any questions so far? Very good. So if we look at the different sectors, there's a lot of vendors that are here today, and every single ISV, independent software vendor, is figuring out where should we be playing when it comes to AI. And a lot of these older organizations, legacy organizations, what they are doing today is that they are trying to apply AI into their solutions. So that's been really the key with, for example, with a lot of Microsoft vendors. The other thing is also there's a lot of net new organizations that want to take the AI capabilities and start competing with the bigger legacy organizations. So service providers, I did ask, any service provider in this room? So I'm sure that you guys have always also been asking yourself, where should we play within the AI field? Where are we going to be providing the value? In my role of CTO for this organization in New York, we just did an evaluation of 4 or 5 different MSPs and looked what are the key capabilities that they can bring. And one of the key areas we also looked at, are they applying AI for automation when it comes to servicing our organization? So even the typical traditional MSPs and value-added resellers have to be looking at this. Then, of course, you have the technological providers like Microsoft, AWS, Amazon, Google, and they are the ones that are putting a lot of effort, billions of dollars into large language models and all those kind of things. And then finally, end user organizations. So we're all impacted in one way or the other when it comes to the AI. Any questions so far? Are we all good? Cool. So I love this slide. It kind of gives you an idea of the complexity of the AI, specifically when you look at generative AI. On the left-hand side, you have typical on-the-shelf applications like Copilot. So you buy it, you subscribe to it, and you start deploying it. Then you have the next, and Mikko is going to show more about this in his side of presentation. Then you have the embedded, where you take the APIs from, for example, OpenAI, and embed that into your application and use the LLM models that way. So going from the left-hand side, simple way, you utilize the platforms that already exist, and moving into where you embed your solutions and working with organizations such as ACX with Mikko. And then you have the extended version where you take internal data from within your organization. It could be a quality database, it could be a Q&A database, and you take that information and you meld that with the LLM, large language model, and provide the data into your end users. And that's one of the case studies that Mikko is going to be talking about. Then moving to the right-hand side, you have if you have money, first of all, you have to have money to do that. You take the foundation models and maybe take a sector, take a vertical, and amend those foundation models with your own stuff. That's costly. That's something that I haven't seen anybody, regular organization do. And the final model on the right-hand side are the organizations like Microsoft and the big players that put millions and millions in doing foundation models. One thing, by the way, what is happening in the marketplace, that those large language models are becoming more and more industrialized. So you have much smaller models. So the ones that are being built by OpenAI, by Facebook, by Google, they are those massive ones. But I feel and believe that there's going to be domain specific much more in the future. Cool. Not going to this, you've probably seen this many times. I specifically focus on Microsoft. The beauty with Microsoft is that they provide you with all the tools that you need in running your development scenarios. Of course, there's other vendors, whether it's Amazon, Google, but the fact that they provide you with a platform, they provide you with the solutions like Copilot. They have Copilot into every single stack. solution stack that they have. And now, if you look at the right-hand side with the custom co-pilots, you're able to build your own custom pilots as well. So platform, you will not have to invest in the platform itself when you do these things, which is, I think, great. I'm old enough to be in the, when I was building my ISV solutions, we had to also invest in the infrastructure, which is crazy nowadays. You don't want to do that anymore. Cool. So that's about the background. Okay, are we good so far? Let me move into the business model itself, and this is really going to be useful for you if you go into any organization and talk about envisioning, about business modeling, you're going to run into this framework. And let me just define what the framework is. It's a codified way to organize your thinking and assess a problem, and gives you structure and promotes you with a discipline. Let me give you an example. I'm currently educating 13 senior partner development managers for a global company. It's an accounting platform, and these are all very senior level guys. So they want to build a kind of a partnering model with other tech providers. So we are using these frameworks to envision what we can build together so we can become much better together, okay? And without having a framework that can be replicated and done in the same way, it won't be useful. Think about it. If you have 5 different product lines and everybody is doing their own thing in their own way, you will never be able to compare them. So it's seriously important. So these are the 2 books, and I highly recommend. This already came out back in 2010, and that came a little bit later. This is the Business Model Canvas Framework book. And that Value Proposition Design book is the book that allows you to analyze the chops, pains, and gains that your solution is going to take care of. Building anything, you have to understand the persona. Building anything, you have to understand, why are we building this? To whom are we building this? So this is the, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail, but I just wanted to introduce you the framework itself. It consists of 9 building blocks, and you usually start with asking yourself, who is my customer? What is the market segment that we want to be going after? Then you attach that into the value proposition. So who are we providing value to? You're going to ask yourself the question, how is my solution going to be addressing the needs for that market segment? So that's the bridge between the value, how are you providing value to that market segment? What is your channel to the customer? How are you selling that into your customer? And remember now, it doesn't have to be an external customer. Every single user in your organization is your customer. So this will apply both to internal and external. Then you are having the question, do we have the key activities in place? Do we know what to do when we execute on our business model, okay? Then you ask yourself, do we have the technical and process capabilities to be able to execute on our model? And then, do we need partnerships to be able to execute this business model? Let me ask you a question here. What is 0 times 9? It's 0. So any one of these building blocks, if any one of these building blocks fail, it's going to be still 0. So that's why it's important. And you should be able to demonstrate and talk about your value prop to anybody in the executive management in less than 5 minutes by showing this. Typically what happens is that you talk in horizons. And I'm using typically my workshop deliveries, McKinsey Horizon frameworks. I'm going to show you a real example. So Horizon 1 is where you really look at your current status and making sure that you are meeting the commitments that you've already agreed upon. Horizon 2 is where you look at the emerging business opportunities that you might be working on. And then finally, you have the future, making sure that you are going to be competitive in the future as well. So when you do your planning, you do it in horizons. And this is kind of the most Microsoft, all the global independent software vendor and Microsoft that they partner with, they usually use this to envision solutions, whether it's internal solutions or built for external consumption. And here's an example of a real true case. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but kind of showing you a typical envisioning framework. So you have the themes. So in this case, this is an organization, Office 365 vendor, ISV. I was their GM. And when Microsoft went from on-premise SharePoint into online, it wasn't really nice the way it did it. So nobody wanted to buy the on-premise environment anymore. And the online didn't have the capabilities for us to build. So we were losing money right and left. Nobody wanted to buy our solutions. So we had to, as management team, transition ourselves from securing our current customer opportunities by, first of all, securing and providing full parity with the on-premise share environment. So the first 12 months, we were just doing that. Then when we went to the next stage, we worked on enhancing the quality and risk management side of things. This was a Q&A risk and quality risk management solution. And we started applying APIs for partners to deploy, and then finally applying AI. So you kind of see doing a planning in stages, in horizons. Any questions so far? You're going to get this deck, by the way, so you don't have to take pictures. If you want to take pictures, you can, of course. Okay, so let me run through. And this is now the business canvas framework and the questions that you have to ask yourself if you start applying it. So what kind of impact will it have on your customer segments? First of all, it might open completely new market segments for you that you didn't think that existed before because of the technology. You might even have a more detailed customer segmentation ability. And then on the value prop side, think about the solutions. And Mikko's company is very good at the usability. So you can have personalized experiences when it comes to the solution itself. You might be able to identify new business models and really build something that didn't exist before, novel solutions. So in the same way, having something that didn't exist before, the value prop, using the AI, and then identifying market segments that you might not have addressed before. It's also going to change your customer relationship because you might have more automated interactions. You might be able to customize on the fly the experience itself. You might be able to utilize digital platforms to offer your solutions in a completely different way than you used to before. And overall, the marketing might change. And what is more important, getting new revenue streams that you didn't have before. So I think that's also something that is super exciting. My godson is building a AI-driven solution for marketing firms. And guess what he has realized? No marketing firm wants to buy it. He's now selling it directly to the end user organizations because the marketing departments are getting so much benefit out of it because it's so more cost effective. So it's also changing the dynamics between vendors and organizations using it, which is kind of cool. So you might have identify new products and opportunities. And of course, everybody wants to have a recurring revenue model. Of course, you have to have a good partnerships. Most organizations don't have it. It's a very hard skill to get the AI technologies themselves. So you probably pick one of the big vendors, whether it's Microsoft or AWS or Google. You might have data providers. You probably know AI is all about data. There might be some external data sources that you might apply. And then the key activities that you have to be focusing on, which might be different from what you had before. So that comes to the training of the potential models. the data management itself, and then one thing that organizations kind of forget about is the ethics and the compliance side of things. And then, do you have the resources? I mean, internally within your organizations, you have to ask yourself, do you have the resources to be able to build whatever you are considering of building? And then, do you have the money? So the cost structure itself, because it might not be very cheap to do it. Does it make sense? I mean, you have to ask yourself these questions, and you usually go from right to left. And I'm asking, why do you do from right to left? Why wouldn't I start from the partnerships and key activities and key resources? Anybody? Let me help you out. If you don't have the right-hand side in place, you don't have the customer that wants to buy, and you provide value, what does it matter if you invest in the resources and the rest of it? So that's why developers typically start on the left-hand side. We don't have the resources. I'm sure that you will get resources if you identify a solution that provides value to your customer segment. So it's kind of interesting. And my final piece, before I let Mikko to jump here, is to provide you with a journey. And I love this framework. It's 3 steps. And I hope that these slides will help you when you get into those situations where you need to talk to your management about the opportunities within, and it doesn't necessarily have to be AI, but the steps that you take to convince that you have everything in place. So phase 1 is the internal validation. So you have to assess your internal AI maturity and really understand what is the value that you're trying to create. You have to understand, do you have the resources, the infrastructure to be able to create that? And do you have the industry understanding? Because AI seems to be driving towards industry specific, which makes sense. Do you understand the regulations? If you deploy into EU, you have to understand the EU rules. And then, is this going to increase our cost or lessen our cost? Are we going to get more revenue? What are the real business gains of us deploying AI? So that phase 1 is really to validate the AI value creation opportunity. Phase 2, that's when that's the customer validation. So let's make sure that we understand the industry, the market segment. Let's make sure we understand the value delivery routines. How are we providing that value to the customers at that entire life cycle? And also look at the risks. Do we understand the risks, associated risks in our delivery? So that's the outcome of this, is the verified AI value capture ability. And the final phase is when you develop the business model either internally or for an external organization. So that's when you really understand all the actors within that. You have the value creators. Where is the data going to be? How are we going to make sure that we can get into that data? Are our contracts made in a way that we are not going to get a lawsuit if something happens? There's a lot of that. So, and of course, testing the revenue model itself, because remember now, and Mikko might be talking about that a little bit, when you build the model for your, whether it's a RAG model or whatever you do in the AI, some of that will consume a lot of your resources from the cloud. So, and that's something not to sneeze about. If you come to me and say, I'm going to build a better LLM model than Microsoft, you say, good luck. Probably put 100 billion in it already. So those are the 3 steps that you should look at. And like I said, it's more like the management view on things. And hopefully this was useful, because I'm going to get Mikko to talk about a few cases that he's been working on. Cool.
Thank you, Petri.
Any questions, by the way? Are we good? Did it make sense, the framework? Cool.
Okay. So thanks, Petri. That's a great part of the envisioning work that Petri's team does. And then now we're going to talk more about the design and development. So we have prepared 3 case studies. These are real life case studies where we have implemented the AI in different use cases. And what I really want to approach here is that what makes a great AI enhanced product? what is the difference there? And one theory is, of course, the UI. So is it hard to build a compelling UI to an AI solution? And it's actually not. So if you think about like 1981, every user, not just the developers, but every user who wanted to do something with computers, they had to be able to operate through the prompt. So you had to be able to speak computer. In 1985, the graphical user interface came with Windows, and it was, of course, for a normal user much easier to approach that. But there's quite a lot of like cognitive load going on there. So first, the designer has to think that like what kind of icon would represent the file manager, what would be a good icon for save, and then we as users have to learn those. In the 90s, when the internet came up with like vast amounts of unstructured data, we went back to kind of text-based interface with the search, so the Netscapes and Mosaics and later Google. It wasn't really like prompt. You didn't need to know the exact prompt, but it wasn't natural language either. So you're trying to mimic kind of keywords that you want to find, and then you get search results, and then you try to find the relevant search result in the middle of all the ads. And then, of course, the Apple and the touch phones changed the paradigm again. This vast amount of unstructured data got put into different applications. Then the graphical user interface was the norm again. And we kind of made a full circle. Now we are back into the text-based UI. But this time, computers understand our language. We don't need to use the prompt, we don't need to talk computer, the computers talk human. So the point here being that we have been through quite a many paradigm shifts in the UI. So implementing chat UI is not especially complex. What about the backend then? Surely the AI backend is complex, and it is true. It's been kind of in development for decades. The good news is that the big guys, they have poured tens of billions, hundreds of billions into this. So AI is now just like AI backend, it's just like Lego elements in Azure or whatever is the choice of your platform. Of course, you need to know how to use that, but you don't need to do the heavy lifting. It's already been done for all of us. Another good news here is that the big guys, they are in a real like land grabbing mode. So they want to get more customers. So this is all accessible with quite reasonable cost. Of course, you can go crazy. You can like spend all your money here, but like if you're smart, you can get a lot of value that wasn't accessible to anybody 2 or 5 years ago. Now it's available for all of us. So it's really like compelling space to build something new. But again, the question like, what makes the difference? How can you build a great application that uses AI? And like Petri, I like to go back to this garden slide. You can have so many conversations around this slide. So on the left-hand side, you have the pure buy play. So if you want to start your AI journey with readily packaged solutions that have AI in them, that's a perfectly viable way of going forward. On the right-hand side, we have this like really expensive space where you start to build your own foundation models for fine-tuning. And if you have a budget for that, you know it. If you're not sure, you don't have money for it. So don't go there. For me, the most compelling space is the space here in the middle. So space where we can build something more, but we don't need to do all the heavy lifting ourselves. So you see the foundation model has been built, the fine-tuning has been done for you. The retrieval augmented generation is kind of borderline case. So in some cases we want to do that, in some cases we don't, and I have examples for that. So if you look at this very simplistically, you could say that like everything else has been done, the blue box have been done, you only need to plug an application on top of that. So it sounds very simple, right? And that is exactly the wrong way of thinking about it. So we need to go back, and this is like a timeless quote. Steve Jobs saying that you need to start from the customer experience and work your way back into technology, not the other way around. And it sounds very simple, but this is a mistake that we do like time and again. We start thinking, okay, wow, I have this technology, what can I do with it? Rather than thinking, what is the customer problem I can solve? What kind of pain can I address? Or what kind of gain can I make? This ties very closely to Petri's work. Petri was highlighting this in the canvas, and we always come back to that. Do you understand what you are doing? If you do, then you're in a great place to deliver something great. So that's why we say that you should never build an AI solution. You should build a great solution that is then using AI where it's appropriate. If your mindset is just fixed to building AI, you're probably not focusing enough on the customer. AI is a great way of getting commitment from the organization, getting excitement into it, getting budget into it. And so you can use that word to get traction, but keep always the customer, the purpose in mind. So the first case study with this in mind is using like pure LLM, large language model. There's no retrieval augmented generation there. We'll come back to that. But this is a little bit like a different way of using an LLM. So LLMs, like you probably know, they are language agnostic. They're mostly trained in English, but they can do pretty decent job in any human language. And they can also do pretty decent job in any computer language. So while they speak Finnish and French and English, they also understand C++ and Java and so on. So the case study here, going back to understanding what is the customer need, is that we as ACX, when we take on new clients on board, we often need to go and audit their code. Look at like, what is the starting phase for us? Like, where do we need to pay attention to? And like this customer case had almost 100,000 lines of code, not massive, but it's like decent size application. And try to understand what is the state of 100,000 lines of code. So that's going to take weeks or months. And we can't go to our customers and say that, thank you for trusting us. We're going to get back to you in 2 months' time when we've done a bit of analysis. So what we did is that we looked at this code, understanding like there are different teams who've been working at it at different times. There's probably areas in that code that like need more attention than the others, and trying to understand what should we focus on. So we built an LLM-based tool that is analyzing that code in a matter of hours. And in this case, we wanted to understand what are the vulnerabilities in the code. So the system looks through those, it categorizes them from low to critical, and this less than 100,000 lines of code resulted into a 200-page document that listed all the possible vulnerabilities that it identified. And there were 1,000 of them, out of which 25 were classified as critical. And this is not 100% correct. It's not intended to be. So probably it was like hallucinating some of these. It probably missed some of them, but it gives us a heat map. In a couple of hours, for a few $100s, it crunches through the code and tells us, okay, these areas are a bit soft. I would pay attention here. This is recently done. It's pretty solid. And of course, you can customize. So you can at the same time ask, give me an executive summary, give me like a table of this, whatever you want. LLM is gonna spit out that output for you. Good. Second example is going to take us into RAG, so retrieval augmented generation. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but it is one of the best tools to expand the capabilities of the LLMs for a reasonable cost and in a reasonable time. It's a really good tool to have. Now let's look at a little bit like how it works. This is how your normal ChatGPT works. So you write the prompt and it goes to the backend, and the backend then delivers you a response. Very simple. The RAG brings the second part to this process. So this left-hand side, where you can add custom data sources. So remember, large language models, they have been like trained with a huge amounts of data, but it's publicly available data. So it doesn't probably have your product documentation. It doesn't have your contracts. It doesn't have your competitive intelligence. None of that information is available there, or at least shouldn't be. If you want to use the power of the LLM with your custom data, you probably want to look into the retrieval augmented generation. So while you ask something through this web interface, next step is that we're going to look at the custom data sources, and it's like an open book exam for the LLM. So LLM doesn't just like stick to what it knows from its training, but it has this other data source that it can look for information. So how does this conversation flow work? Let's take an example. We start here from the top left. If you want to request, you want to know how many employees does Acme Corporation have? This request goes through our augmented LLM endpoint, which is the kind of orchestration machine, and it goes to a search engine. And behind the search engine, we have these custom data sources. This search engine is like cognitive search from Azure. It's not like Google, so it's a different kind of search engine. Now, this search engine is going to look into these custom data sources and it finds out some relevant information from the company directory. It says that Acme Corporation has 30 employees, 60 contractors, and 2,000 customers. But we want this to be LLM. We want this to be a chat. It's not a Q&A machine that is providing answer to the question and then some information that is not relevant for you. What we're going to do is that we're going to send both the original user message and something called system message to the LLM. And the system message is the instructions how to work out. So first we are saying that you are a helpful AI. We are telling them, okay, you want to be helping. You are not a pirate. You are not telling jokes this time, right? We want to answer the question using only this information we provided. In this case, only this information because there might be another Acme Corporation that was used to train the LLM, or it might be in a creative mode and it starts hallucinating, making stuff up. We want, in this case, to be fact-based and only stick to the knowledge we have fed through these custom data sources. And thus the answer comes out, Acme Corporation has 30 employees. It is something that the LLM couldn't answer if you didn't do this augmentation, if you didn't provide the custom data for it. Good. So how is this implemented then? So you have the very simple web interface you can embed anywhere. You have, for example, Azure Functions, AWS Lambda. It could be a Java web server that is doing the orchestration. The document store can be anything. It can be a blob storage. It can be a more sophisticated database. And then we have these search engines that are like mining the information from the data sources. And like any good solution, you can change your engine. If you don't like V6, you can plug in the V8. So OpenAI, BART, whatever LLM, it's a kind of LLM agnostic solution. And that's the way it should be. You don't want to invest into fixed tech stack. This space is moving forward so fast that you want to have the agility that you can plug and play. You can always bring in new technology and new techniques. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, this is how it works. So let's look at the cognitive search part first. So you need to enter the data either manually or automatically. We've done both. If you do a simple trial, you probably want to do it manually. If you import 200 bodies of some material, you want to have an automation there. You can have free text, like a blob storage with a free text, or you can have more structured databases. You can even plug into Confluence that has the search engine integrated into it. So really any data source you want. This cognitive search indexer goes through that data storage, and it then it's easier to search it. And the semantic ranker provides the contextuality into the search. So depending on your search string, it may prioritize different aspects in the data storage. And then the user flow. So you ask something through this web interface. Functions is the orchestration. It goes and asks the information from your custom data storage, and then goes to the LLM and returns the answer. If this is interesting for you, we have recorded a full 30-minute webinar where we go a little bit deeper into this. In the interest of time, we're not going to dig any deeper into the technical aspects here. So this brings us to the second case study with the retrieval augmented generation. And again, let's start from the need. So the challenge we see many companies have is how do you inspire your internal teams? How do you get them excited about the AI? How do you move them from slides, PowerPoint slides, to the first trial so that they can get hands-on and get understanding about this? In many organizations, using something like ChatGPT is forbidden, so you can't go there. Yet many organizations don't have the resources to offer any alternative tools to play around with. McKinsey did a study about this. It's something we covered last fall in one of the presentations. So if you look at the CIOs, the IT management, they get a lot of pressure. So the C-suite and board is telling to build some epic stuff. Let's be leaders in the AI space. If you look bottom up, every department, every person has a little bit different ideas and needs. How do you accommodate all of these? How do you build AI at scale? And this is what we are looking at. Building one LLM enhanced solution. Note, it's enhanced by LLM and AI. It's not AI focused. It is solving real problems for the customers. You can also do something we didn't cover in the previous slide. So you can serve different personas. You can have different prompts. So the questions are very different if you are a product manager compared to a marketing assistant. So you can have different prompts there, and you can have different data repositories. So we can really, with one solution, serve different use cases, different users' needs. So what we built was like side-by-side comparison, where you can ask from this specific Acme Corporation GPT, for example, who is the CEO of the company? And remember, the LLM doesn't know anything about Acme. It's not part of its training body. If you compare it to a ChatGPT response, it would be something like, I don't know, or it could give other Acme Corporation CEOs, you don't know if that's relevant data. So you can compare side by side what information can we get from a custom data source versus like public LLM. And the questions don't need to be this simple. So in this case, for example, we fed this AI model the investor pages, the publicly available investor pages of this company. And then you can ask, like, what is the strategy of the company? And this is not a QA. It's not like just finding section there in investor pages. It is an LLM that is generating answer every time differently. So you can have a conversation with it. You can drill down deeper, just like you would with the ChatGPT. I had to gray out the name of the company. That's why we call it Acme Corporation, but it is a real company behind this. Then the third example, it's a little bit more advanced. So it's using something called functions and something called assistants that is just in the preview now, in the past months, not in general availability. In this case, we're looking at simplifying the output coming from the AI. So human interface has always been very problematic for developers because we are not systematic, we are random, right? If you do computer-computer interface, it's easy from a development point of view, but if you ask a human what date it is, depending on where they're from, they use different formatting for that, or they start explaining that, it's the last Wednesday of December this year, that's the date I mean. Now, when you build solutions where you integrate AI, you easily introduce the same problem to the software interfaces. And this is where the functions and assistants are stepping in. So they can convert natural language into API calls. So if you ask, who are my top customers, as a response, you can get something that you can send to an API. So you convert human language to computer language. What it means is that it brings structure out of this human language that is like unstructured. It brings more structure. And that is something we can use again in a different use case. So have you tried ChatGPT and have you tried to ask, like, give me 50-word answer on something? It's very stubborn. It gives you 100 words. And then you say, no, I said 50, 50. And it may or may not be able to instruct it, but sometimes it's really hard to get like answers in the same format, same length, same tonality, and so on. So we can use this technique, and our third case study is AI-assisted document summary, specifically helping us in a recruitment case. So at ACX, our job is to find customers that we can help, and then on the other hand, find people that can help those customers. So we have we get hundreds of applications in every month that we need to process. And then we have a roster of thousands of people that we can know that, okay, for this kind of case, this person is the right one, and we can then match the right need and the right person. Now, going through hundreds of applications, you want to really focus on the top talent, the top guys who can get the job done. Unfortunately, you also get a lot of applicants who are not a match at all. For example, they don't have a work permit to work in Canada, where we have most of our developers. So we don't want to spend time on those. So what we have built is an AI-assisted summary, AI-assisted tool that brings different outputs, one of them being a summary. So every morning, I can look at the pipeline of the candidates that are coming in and saying, okay, did we lose traction with any of them? Are there any new ones that we should pay attention to? This is something that is really hard to summarize. Like you can imagine, you get applicants sending their resumes, and they are unstructured. They are all over the place, and it's easy to process one resume or CV, but like imagine when you get 100 of those, you easily lose attention, and you don't want to lose attention on the ones that are really those top talents. So taking that unstructured data and getting out of that, like what is the overall score? What is the seniority? What is the experience? Give me a summary that is not too long and not too short. Give me the pros and cons of this candidate. I can read something like this through in a minute, and then I make a decision, do I want to pay more attention into this? Rather than going through all those resumes that have no relevance, who don't even have work permit, anything like that. We can, of course, because this is an LLM, we can get a lot of other things out of this same tool. So the next step when we have hired somebody is to build them a resume with the ACX format. So if our clients want to understand that who are we placing to like a work, we want something that is our format, and like this takes surprisingly long time. When you take a resume and you try to get the important points there, it can take 30 minutes or 60 minutes to do that. It's not really value-adding work, but LLM is very good for that. This challenge with the like ChatGPT kind of LLMs is that they always come out with a different format. It would be different length, and like this is something we managed to standardize with the functions and assistants. So this is how it looks like. We can request, summarize, first name, last name, a summary of the candidate, minimum 50 words, and then we can even give like criteria here. And this is something we learned by doing. So seniority, we gave our own description. So junior is less than 2 years of experience, intermediate is 2 to 7 years. So you can give them boundaries how to rank and score these people. One thing that like was very interesting to find, we have this star rating at the beginning. So we want to have like an understanding is the candidate from 1 to 5 stars. And star rating in LLM's mind normally is something like Uber star rating. So if you're not 5 stars, there is something seriously wrong with you. And that's not helpful at all. All the candidates were either 4 stars or 5 stars. It didn't make any difference. So we had to calibrate that expectation, give examples and say, this in our opinion is 3 stars, this is 4 stars, this is 5 stars. Another example is that in a resume, people often say a lot of things that are not really true in the introduction. If you drill into their actual work experience, that's where you see what they have done. So we had to teach the system to look into parts where people tell the truth rather than the marketing text there right at the top. So what do you get out when you put my resume, for example? You get this object out of it. So it says candidate name is Mikko Peltola. This is the 50-word summary, the experience, and the seniority. Now, this third example is a little bit more complex than the first two because it integrates into other systems. And that is where the complexity begins. So for example, this is using the Azure Assistants, which is not GA yet. So what we built, we need to be very careful what is the customer's need. If we want to inspire the customer and show what can be done, we can use these kind of futuristic tools. If we want to build something that the HR manager of a company can use every day and they can rely on, we need to be a little bit careful because this space evolves so fast. So when the Azure Assistant is not GA yet, it means that they can anytime pull out the support for the APIs, they can change the structure. So what worked yesterday may not work today. And as long as the customer is okay with that, they understand that this is like a showcase that is futuristic, that's fine. But if the HR manager has like sold their time to somebody else, they are not prepared to spend that like 6 hours it takes anymore, we can generate a lot of problems. That's why like not going with technology first is so important. Understanding why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this trial or this implementation? It just brings us back to this, look at the customer's needs first.
And in fact, going back to the business model canvas itself, what's the value we're trying to give to that persona?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we've done a full loop from the theory to practical to theory. Now, Betty and I, we've been working on this AI for over a year, or we started recording webinars and presentations a year ago. We call this Approachable AI. So we try to dive into a topic and then explain that so that people can understand it. There's so much misinformation, there's so much too technical stuff out there. So we've done like, I think this is the 12th recording that we do now. So if you're interested, go to our webpage, go to YouTube, and find more content there. Also, if you have topics that you would like to hear us discuss, please send us feedback. And then we also have blog posts, case studies. Our tech team is building something. So we do the talking, and then they do the implementation. They share that knowledge. So everything we say here, we can back up with real use cases and real implementations. That concludes it. Thank you very much,
I hope
everybody.
it was useful.